So this is the OnePlus 8 Pro and this is the OnePlus 8. The big deal this year is the price increase. This phone is retailing for $899 for the base model compared to $699 for the OnePlus 8. To put this in context, the OnePlus 7 Pro from last year came out the gate for $669. That's pretty much a $230 price increase from the previous year. We're used to OnePlus increasing the prices of their smartphones, and usually it's by $50 here, $50 there, but never for $230. It's now in the exact same territory as the iPhone 11 Pro and the Galaxy S20. Now you have a very similar design to the previous model. The big deal this year is that you get a taller aspect ratio compared to a wider one. So you have a phone that's easier to hold in the hand because it's not as wide, but it's a bit taller, making it a little bit more difficult to get your finger at the top. The cameras are also a bit different. You have new lenses and you also have some more sensors on the left-hand side, whereas the OnePlus 8 looks very similar to the OnePlus 7 Pro. Another design change is the text on the bottom. You now have these caps compared to the predecessor, which I think looks nicer, but I think no text at all would look even better. Now this display is 6.78 inches. It's a beautiful display. The fingerprint sensor is ridiculously fast, but I do not like the sloped edges. They're more deep than the previous model. This one was a bit smoother, but still too deep. This one just drops even further. And because of that, you can see some banding going along the sides. It kind of distorts the image when it's going over the edge. The OnePlus 8, on the other hand, has a perfect display in terms of the way it looks. It still slopes to the edges, but it's not as deep. It's just a lot easier to hold and it's much easier to type on. The other thing is there's no longer a pop-up camera like they had on the 7 Pro. It's now using a circle notch at the top left-hand corner of the display. Obviously, these displays are probably from Samsung because by God, the display on the OnePlus 8 Pro is beautiful. It is QHD. It supports 120 Hz at QHD, and it has a peak brightness of 1300. Now, to be honest, even though the regular OnePlus 8 is 90 Hz, the difference going from 90 Hz to 120 Hz is so minor. Like if I'm sitting here staring at it, you'll notice it, but it's not as noticeable going from 60 to 90 Hertz. I do like the fact that OnePlus allows you to keep it at 120 in QHD, whereas on other phones like the Galaxy S20, you can only have 120 at full HD. Now, both of these devices do have stereo speakers with one speaker on the bottom of the phone and the other one in the top of the display. They sound very similar, but I do prefer the sound better on the OnePlus 8. There's slightly more treble. Now, battery life is interesting because this has a 4510 milliamp hour battery, which is slightly bigger than the Galaxy S20 Plus. And overall, battery life has been pretty good, on par with the Galaxy competition. Now, the thing is, when you're running it at QHD and 120 Hertz, you're getting about 5 hours of screen on time. However, if you drop it down, I did notice you got about 30 to 45 more minutes of use at full HD. This is the first year, though, we're finally seeing wireless charging on a OnePlus smartphone. On the 8 Pro, you can quickly wirelessly charge this device at 30 watts. That's a big deal because it's fast. It's faster than the P40 Pro, which can only do it at 27 watts. Now, unfortunately, you don't get wireless charging on the OnePlus 8, but you do get better battery life, 4,300 milliamp hours paired with a smaller display, which is only full HD and which can only run at 90 Hertz. The other thing is IP68 certification. This is also the first time a OnePlus device is fully water certified. So all these added features are nice. It's things we've been requesting for years. But the one thing that's always set the OnePlus smartphones compared to the bigger phones has always been the camera experience. It's never been just as good. Now don't get me wrong, every single year they get slightly better, but it's never on the same level. And for $900, it better be on the same level. So in this photo, I have a bunch of front-facing pictures. And as you can see here, I think they did all a pretty good job. I personally like the way the OnePlus 8 looks the best. It doesn't have the contrasty yellow tones of the iPhone 11 Pro, but I think it did a best job with my skin tones. You can see my eyes the most, whereas on the Galaxy S20 Plus, my face is just too red, it's too sharp, and it's a little oversaturated. I think the OnePlus 8 Pro was meant to look like the OnePlus 8, but it just overexposed the picture a little bit. Now this photo is just to show you the difference between white balances between all of these photos. I think the OnePlus 8 Pro has the nicest white balance. It looks clean, it looks simple, it has a nice punchy color to it. The Galaxy device, on the other hand, is going for more of a cool tone. The iPhone is sitting in the middle with more yellow tones involved in the picture. Not as vibrant, it's a little bit softer compared to the Galaxy S20, which is very sharp. And then you have the OnePlus 8, which does a decent job, but looks washed out compared to the rest. This photo is showing off the ultra-wide camera, 11 Pro versus 8 Pro, and right off the bat, the 8 Pro is definitely making the colors look a bit more contrasty. It's also slightly, and I mean ever so slightly, overexposing the photo. You can tell with the trees in the background. I noticed that the OnePlus 8 Pro tends to use a lot of reddish hues, and you can see that in the tree and on the ground of the road. So again, same photo, but this time it's with the regular wide lens, and we still have some of the same things we saw in the previous photo. Both cameras are doing a consistent job of keeping the color science the same. However, we do have more of a contrasty picture with the OnePlus 8 Pro. This photo is showing off a bunch of different things. You have good dynamic range in all photos. The skies look nice and blue, a bit too blue with the Galaxy S20 Plus, but that's probably because I forgot to turn off Scene Optimizer. You can see inside of the shed with the 11 Pro. It's doing a much better job than the other phones with shadow details. The 8 Pro and the S20 Plus are pretty much tied. I do find there to be a bit more contrast with the 8 Pro. And again, if you look at the wood in the shed, you're seeing a lot of reddish tones. The 8, on the other hand, is a bit more flat. It's very aggressive with the shadows, making it a bit harder to see inside the shed. So just like the Galaxy S20 Plus, the OnePlus 8 Pro can zoom in up to 30 times, whereas the OnePlus 8 and iPhone 11 Pro can only zoom in up to 10 times using digital zoom. In terms of color science, you're getting more of a yellow look with the iPhone 11 Pro. You have more of a colder, contrastier tone with the S20 Plus, whereas you have something in the middle with the 8 Pro and the OnePlus 8. This is what all the phones look like zoomed in at 10 times. I personally think the Galaxy S20 Plus looks the best. It's the sharpest, it's the cleanest, it's the most appealing. In second place, you have the OnePlus 8 Pro. It's noisy, and it's definitely not as sharp as the S20 Plus, but it looks better than the other two. In third place, we have the iPhone 11 Pro, and in last, we have the OnePlus 8. And finally, we have 30 times zoom, Galaxy S20 Plus versus 8 Pro. They both look terrible, but if anything, it's slightly better on the Galaxy S20 Plus. Now, when it comes to nighttime photography, OnePlus has done a much better job, but it's still not on the level of the Galaxy S20 Plus or the iPhone 11. The tones are all red again. There's a lot of magenta being introduced into the photos, and it's really throwing things off. The iPhone 11 Pro has the most natural nighttime look. The lights on the 8 Pro and the 8 are completely overexposed. In fact, I think the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus did the most balanced job of exposing the lights in the background. Okay, this is a test of OnePlus 8 versus OnePlus 8 Pro, testing the differences in the cameras. They should be fairly similar since they're both pretty much the exact same phone, but this will give you a better idea of how it looks. Quick front-facing camera test. This is the microphone. You guys let me know which camera actually sounds better. We have the OnePlus 8 Pro versus the iPhone 11 Pro. Wow, I'm losing it. And you guys can see the difference in stabilization. Tell you which one looks better. 4K video is really impressive with the 8 Pro. Now don't get me wrong, it's cleaner and crispier with the 11 Pro, but by God, does it look good with the 8 Pro. Colors are a bit more contrasty, shadows are a bit darker, and of course you have slightly more reddish hues with the 8 Pro. But the big thing I noticed was stabilization. They have really good stabilization at 4K. It's beating out the 11 Pro. Look how shaky it is compared to the OnePlus 8 Pro. Performance is what you'd expect. Snapdragon 865, both of these phones are 5G. You have 8 to 12 gigabytes of RAM, LDDR4, the list goes on. And as you expect, it's just as smooth, if not faster, than any previous device they've released. I do like the fact that you now have Google Now when you swipe to the right, compared to the old shelf they had on the previous model. And just like every other OnePlus device, you have this wonderful, minimalistic experience with easy access to customizing it the way you want. Like, this is what it looks like when you get it out of the box, minus the wallpaper, compared to adding an icon pack, which I think adds an extra touch to a beautiful smartphone. So for years we were screaming at OnePlus for wireless charging, for IP68 certification, and better cameras. And this year, they finally did it. But the downfall to all of this is the price increase that goes along with it. We knew it was gonna happen, and that's what happens when you request all the features of the more expensive smartphones. You get a phone that costs almost as much as the high-end competition. Now, don't get me wrong, this is the best Android smartphone of 2020 so far, but you gotta pay a premium for it. And I think a lot of OnePlus enthusiasts and loyalists are gonna be very, very upset. Now, as for the 8, the regular 8, I don't know, like, it's a great phone, but for $700, you're not including a lot of the key features of the 8 Pro, like the camera sensors are using different Sony sensors. It's not IP68. It doesn't have wireless charging. If you want to compete in that premium segment, you have to have the premium hardware in there. The S20 lineup is pretty much identical. The iPhone 11 offers the same camera, wireless charging, and pretty much battery life across the board. And if OnePlus wants to do that too, then they got to do it with the OnePlus 8. Anyways, that wraps up this review. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.